As my colleague Rick often says at this point, we're using you and using your chart to demonstrate astrology. This does not qualify by any stretch of the imagination as counseling. It's just what we call mini readings. So just to get a quick look. So first up, we've got Keith, and I decided to do something a little bit differently. And that is, this is Keith's birth chart. And on the outside of the chart are the current transits, where the planets are right now. This is from a program called Solar Fire. And even though it's a Windows-based program, I run it on a Mac through an emulation program. Okay. So what we have here with Keith, if you don't know where to go with an astrology chart, I was taught a method that was very simple. You look at the sun, you look at the moon, and then you go through all the houses. Well, any way you want to do it works, and typically the more experienced you get, the more things you leave out, and you just focus on the things that strike you as most important. But if we start here, we have a very interesting contrast. Keith, where's Keith? Hi, Keith. Keith was born with the sun in Aries. Okay, the sun is will and purpose. Aries, the pioneering first sign of the zodiac, has to do with taking initiative, being a pioneer, and sometimes being isolated. However, interestingly, Keith was born with the moon of emotion and feelings in Virgo, which tends to be rather analytical of one's own emotions and feelings, where Aries tends to be impulsive. So then what do we do as astrologers? We go, okay, there's a contrast between the life purpose and will of the sun in Aries to be a pioneer, to live in the moment, to experience life in a fresh way, and yet the habits, the emotions of the moon in Virgo are to analyze. Well, Virgo and Aries have something in common, and we don't usually think about them as having much in common. They are both sharp-edged. They are both, neither one of them is loose and sloppy. I'm not saying Keith is without his loose and sloppy moments, but nevertheless, the essence of being a Virgo with an Aries with the moon in Virgo is being sharp and getting it right. And Mars, the planet of assertion or aggression, which is associated with Aries, forms a right angle, trust me on this, to the moon called a square. When Mars, the planet of action, challenges the moon of habit and feeling, we need action. We need crises. Mars moon charts are emergency charts. They're charts that are very good at responding to crises. And if there aren't any, maybe they make crises, or they break ground, or they push things forward. What I'm really struck by here, and I want to jump into more quickly, because that's the thing in a chart, you can take books that interpret what does the sun in Aries mean? What does the moon in Virgo mean? What does the moon square Mars mean? You can look these up in books and get some ideas. What those books don't do is they don't synthesize. They don't sort of say, how does having a Hungarian mother and having a Korean father, well, how does that work? What does that add up to? And that, to a certain extent, is what astrology is about from a counseling point of view, is to synthesize. But rather than going into that, which I can't really do, what I'd like to say is point out this. Keith has Saturn, the planet of hard, cold reality, in a right angle, in a square. Here, let me change it to another form so you can see it more clearly. Is that going to work? Hold on, there we go. Yeah. Keith has Saturn, red lines, the little box square means Saturn was at a right angle to the sun. Saturn was at a right angle to Mercury. So that's a repressed Aries or a responsible Aries, or one that says, slow down, hot stuff, just slow it down. The negative side is that sort of bubbling cauldron of wanting to do stuff but being burdened by duties and obligations or self-doubt. The positive side is, hey, your new stuff becomes real. It's not just bullshit. Well, what's going on in this chart is that Uranus, the planet of weird and strange, has passed over Keith's son. It did that earlier this year, which means you've already escaped the zoo. You've already, Uranus is the planet of weird, strange, innovative, revolutionary, out of the box. It has an 84-year cycle. It's on your sun, or it was on your sun. And so that's restless, breakaway. Sometimes circumstances change the way you don't want them. Ideally, you get to do something fresh and new. Well, since Saturn was at a right angle with your sun, even though the monkey was let out of the cage, he still doesn't know what zoo he's in. Well, now Uranus is sitting and moving back and forth, not sitting, but challenging your Saturn. The rules, the limits, and the boundaries are breaking down in your life. And in many ways, that's not easy, because the rules and the boundaries and limits of Saturn help us know what's real and what we can control. But Uranus, challenging that, suggests that you can move beyond the old boundaries and limits. And a very interesting way to look at astrology is this: you get the planets, or the planets get you. So if revolutionary Uranus and transformational Pluto have attacked the structure that Saturn represents, you have the choice of hunkering down, resisting change, and being buffeted by winds that aren't of your own making. And yet, when you step in and take risks internally and push past your own inner limits and boundaries, you free yourself up to be the creator of something that's radical and new and different and innovative for you. So I encourage, well, I was going to say I encourage the wild side, but I do encourage the idea, especially for you, Keith, to think out of the box at this time. And my feeling is, if you think you're grounded, then you're probably not doing the right thing. And the oddity is that Venus, which is the planet of love and approval, is in Taurus, which usually gets the message, be nice, don't bother anybody, don't disturb anybody. Your Venus is opposite Neptune. You're very socially sensitive. You're not like a hard-edged Aries in the sense of you don't give a crap. You're very sensitive in relationships and people's evaluation of you. That's nice. It adds some sweetness, tenderness, and imagination, but it can also inhibit the parts of you that are meant to, particularly now, bust out, break down, move against internal limits and external authority. Okay? Thank you, Keith. And again, that's not counseling. Obviously, we'd ask questions, look deeper, find out some other stuff. Here's Adam's chart. Where's Adam? Hey, Adam. Okay. So this is Adam's chart, and let's do the same routine. The sun is in Cancer. Cancer, a water sign, a feeling sign of nurturance and protection. And the moon of feeling is in Pisces, another water sign, a feeling sign. When the sun and the moon are in water signs and someone is, yeah, that's really nice. That's really nice. Yeah, Virgo rising, but we also have at the bottom of the chart, we have Neptune, which is Pisces, key ruling planet. There's a lot of imagination and softness here, and yet there are other pieces that are a bit more complex. For example, Venus, the planet of love, is in Leo. And as I like to say, Venus in Leo does not need to be loved. It needs to be adored. Venus is the means by which we recognize love and approval. And in Leo, it's like you got to give it all, and hopefully you get a lot back. Yet Saturn, the planet of hard, cold reality, and Pluto are both at right angles to Venus. How many times have you given too much and gotten screwed by it? Probably more than once. A couple of reasons. One, he's a compassionate guy, so that means he's a potential victim for people like me. And some others in this room who will remain nameless, who actually are in fact nameless, which is quite weird. But you have the sensitivity and the compassion, but Venus in Leo tends to want to give a lot. Also, you don't know how to take very well. The second house is the bank account of the chart. It's the safety deposit box. And you got three badass planets in there. You have Pluto, you have Saturn and Mars in Scorpio. And that means that you are probably not as nice to yourself as you should be. People who've got tough planets in the second house often are just not underestimate themselves or put themselves down or aware of pieces of darkness in themselves. And yet, what these really represent, Adam, are great power to transform, to tackle difficult things. So how do you be a sweet and loving guy who is a badass at getting stuff done? Well, you do it for things you believe in, for causes you believe in. There's a lot of passion and kick-ass stuff, this Mars-Saturn conjunction. You may be a sweet Cancer with a moon in Pisces, but you're not going to lose a fight. You're, not a physical one. I mean, you probably never had one because you're afraid you'd kill somebody. Mars is the warrior. Mars is pretty badass in Scorpio, and when it's joined with Saturn, I don't know whether the big brothers punched you around or whatever it was, there's a toughening influence here in a very sweet and otherwise sensitive guy. The other thing I wanted to say is the moon of emotion and feeling is at a right angle with the planet Uranus. Now, what do you do if you're really sweet and loving and want to give, and you don't want to hold other people accountable because it's all your fault? You should have fixed it. It's up to you, this Mars, Saturn, and Scorpio. You split. You leave. Uranus is the planet of sudden separation, and when it's hooked up with the moon, there's that sense of, I'm moon in Pisces, I'm all here. Oh, that Adam, he was wonderful. He waxed my car. He put in adoption papers for a kid for me. He created a garden in my backyard. He's awesome. Where is he? Well, Adam got pissed off at you, and he doesn't know how to do that, so Adam left. That's a version of it. Now, okay. The other version of it is, Adam, you have the damn right to leave. That when people have the moon in Pisces, they tend to be psychic sponges. They absorb a lot, and they're really sensitive. And building up barriers is a hard thing to do. So either physically leaving or emotionally and mentally checking out, I think, is a valid tactic for you. You can't be required to be present at the level of feeling and responsiveness that you have. And that the idea of just being elsewhere, losing interest, moving on, I think that's okay for you, okay? The big, also you don't feel like you're from this planet too, but that's because you have Uranus conjoined the South Node in Sagittarius, and hopefully you're not. We need some experts from other galaxies. But the big thing is that next year you get your Saturn return. Saturn takes 29 to 30 years to go around the sun, and it is the astrological indicator of coming of age or becoming an adult. Which means, for younger people, you got time. It's not 21 or 22 or even 23 when you're supposed to have your life figured out. It's closer to 30, and even then, you don't even have to say it. You just feel it. So I think what this Saturn return, it's in Scorpio. It's in the second house of my stuff. I really encourage you to think as selfishly as you possibly can about what will satisfy you most deeply. And I think it won't be anything that's so easy. It's got to have some test to it. But I think you're moving toward a place of purpose and a willingness and an ability, I think, to take on things in a way that you never have before. It doesn't fully blossom for about a year or so. I haven't looked up the precise date, but I think that's where you're going. The other thing is your old beliefs, forget it. Your old ambitions, your old beliefs. Jupiter's the planet of belief. Your Jupiter is at 5 Capricorn. I know you try to be good and responsible, but Pluto and Uranus have been kicking the piss out of it, and Uranus still is. So it's not time to make the long-range plan or to hold yourself accountable for what you haven't accomplished thus far. I think you've got about another year before you click in and go forward with it. Okay? Thanks, Adam. All right, one more. One more. Okay, so here's Juliana. All right. So Juliana is a Taurus. No applause for just her being a Taurus. All right, thank you. Who has the moon in Virgo. Not only has the moon in Virgo, but your moon is exactly conjunct Keith's moon in Virgo. So I think you guys should get together and discuss allergies and other of life's annoyances. That might be fun. All right. So in this case, though, Juliana has her sun in Taurus, which is an earth sign, and has the moon in Virgo, which is an earth sign. And the strength of earth signs is being real and manifesting in the world. The weakness of earth sometimes can be being too literal about what life is. Well, this chart has things in, look how it's spread out. And so Juliana has Mercury of the mind and Venus of love in Gemini, so that lightens her up. Gemini's chatty and light and flexible and adaptable, but she's still a Taurus with a Virgo moon. Don't buy it. The sun and the moon are who we are. Mercury, Venus, and Mars are how we function. Mercury is how we gather information. Venus is how we love and relate. Mars is how we initiate or take action. And what happens is sometimes the servants take over the institution. That is to say that the smaller that behavioral patterns, which are not the essence of ourselves, become so dominant that we lose the essence of ourselves. And I think the essence here for you is much more concentrated and focused. In fact, at the very bottom of this chart, that's the bottom here, it might not look like it is, sits Pluto, the mythological lord of the underworld. And Pluto at the bottom of the chart says, oh, no matter how warm and cozy, Cancer rising you may be, there is something deeper, darker, more intense, more powerful, more potent within you. There may well be a family story. Pluto is opposing Jupiter in Pisces. That can represent lots of things. Religious fanaticism or high aspirations that then crash. There can be this sort of going up. Jupiter's expansive. Jupiter's in the boundless sign Pisces. It's at the top of the chart. It's your world. Oh shit, there's Pluto. Corruption, crime, fear, darkness, devastation, weirdness. What this is almost about is, I think, to enjoy the process of the big rides. And where a Taurus on a negative level said, well, I'm going to enjoy life by not having stress. I think in this chart, it's not about that you're supposed to be terribly stressed. I think what this chart is about is a lot more of how you may maintain a sense of calm, centered purposefulness in the process of having big things move. Okay, let's take a look at some of the cycle stuff. Okay, so look at this. Pluto is 248 years to go around the sun, to go around your chart. Death and rebirth, transformation. Pluto hit your partnership point last year. Now, sometimes this can really transform or devastate partnerships, but sometimes it just means, holy crap, I'm willing to engage at a much deeper level of power and exchange. This Pluto, the dark lord of the underworld, which is not bad, it's just potent and scary like Scorpio sometimes. Pluto is moved from the bottom of your chart, where it was when you were born, to the point of others, meaning needing deeper relationships, negatively attracting manipulative people, positively being more of an agent of change and transformation, externalizing it. The top of the chart, career, Neptune is moving up on it. I think what that means, Neptune, the planet of ideals and dreams, in its 165-year cycle, hitting the top of the career chart, means bringing some of your highest aspirations out into the world, whether it's through a career, whether it's through artistic hobby, whether it's through being of service to the community in some way. There are two planets. These are called the angles. These points, they're the northeast, southwest points, and they are the doors to manifestation or concrete change. And to have two slow-moving planets hit one point and the other point suggests that you're really moving beyond, hopefully, the world as you know it. One other thing I want to say, don't be responsible for other people's craziness. This is called the moon's south node. It's a familiar place we often step in. Yours is in weird, friendly Aquarius in the 8th house of deep exchange next to karmic and responsible Saturn. Are you responsible for that psycho, for that weird person, for that thing? And although you may have the ability to calm down the crazy, Saturn is nicely aligned with planets here, your north node, which is a point of growth or integration, is in Leo. In the bottom half of the chart, it means you be the creative force in your life, respond less to other people's craziness, and create your own kingdom. The North Node in Leo, if North Node's a point of growth or integration, if it's in Leo, it says be a little arrogant. Not to express superiority over other people, but to express the grandeur of yourself. Simply that. And that when you feel like you've had to compromise too much or other people's stuff, it's just ideas. Go with your heart, which is Leo, and let other people have their crazy ideas. Okay? Thank you all so much. Thank you, Soul Food. See you next month.